Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Thor Ragnarok might have been the most fun I've had in a Marvel movie in a while. But you know the drill, new rock stars can't just leave it at that. We gotta dissect the hell out of this movie until we figure out every reason why we love it. It's just like you did with all your toys as a kid, you know? You break them down and lay out all their parts like a psychopath. So let's rewatch Thor Ragnarok and point out all the subtle references to past MCU movies and Marvel comics, as well as the interesting design and tonal influences that went into making this film. And spoiler warning, if you haven't seen Ragnarok yet, just go watch it. Go on, piss off, Ghost. And before I begin, this video was brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, website, or online store, make your next move with Squarespace, but more info on that later. Let's get started. Okay, right away with the opening image, notice how the Marvel title card smolders and burns away. At first it seems like a fun transition to establish Thor and Surtur's fiery abode, but also this visual foreshadows the film's fiery Ragnarok end. In fact, this whole opening scene is really great about setting up the end in the beginning. Notice how Surtur promises Thor that he'll grow to the size of a mountain and thrust his sword into Asgard, and Score skeptically responds that it would be a fun spectacle to see. Of course, this ends up being a promise and a spectacle the film delivers in its final sequence, but obviously more on the ending later. I also like this meta voiceover from Thor that opens the movie.
Now I know what you're thinking. How did this happen?
This actually reminds me of the opening to another third installment of an Avenger, Iron Man 3, which remember opened in a similar darkly funny way.
A famous man once said, "We create our own demons." Who said that? What does that even mean? Doesn't matter. I said it because he said it. So now he was famous and basically getting said by two well-known guys. I'm gonna start again.
I think this establishes these two threequels as structural counterparts. Both movies exile the Avenger away from the action, pairing them with a buddy and a source of comic relief for most of the second act. And both movies end with the Avengers home in ruins as they leave that world behind in search of a new chapter. Also in this scene, Thor and Surtur introduce the idea of Ragnarok, obviously the title of the movie. Ragnarok is the concept from Norse mythology. It translates to Twilight of the Gods. It's a cyclical doomsday type event where all the gods die off, including Odin, and their children take over, beginning the cycle anew. This was worked into the Thor comics, coming up repeatedly and serving as a subject of Thor's Avengers Disassembled comic in 2004. Thor attempts to prevent Ragnarok by meeting with the gods to the gods. Ultimately, he allows himself and Asgard to be destroyed. Now, I'll get to the other Thor comic influences as we go. Also, I love this joke of Thor having to wait for Mjolnir, having mistimed the summoning. You may recognize this as a callback to the Avengers during his fight with Hulk on the helicarrier. Actually, this could be a wink to these two butting heads again in this movie. Moving on to Asgard, where Thor comes upon Loki disguised as Odin staging this mock play. Now, in case you missed it, this scene is a restaging of Loki's supposed death in Thor: The Dark World. Even the choral music from this choir is composer Brian Taylor's funeral theme from that movie. And yes, Thor here is being played by a cameo of Chris Hemsworth's brother, Luke Hemsworth. Remember, he's in Westworld. Also, Matt Damon cameos as Loki, and Sam Neill plays Odin. You'll remember Sam Neill from Jurassic Park with co-star Jeff Goldblum in this movie. He was also in director Taika Waititi's last movie, Hunt for the Wilderpeople. Now, in this play, Loki apologizes for turning Thor into a frog, which is a reference to the Thor comics by Walter Simonson, which includes a frog version of Thor called Throg. He carries a little hammer called Frogmjolnir. Yes, that does sound like I just pulled it out of my ass. Welcome to comics. By the way, this move with Thor holding Loki between his hand and the hammer is another detail pulled from the Simonson run in the comics. It's interesting here how Thor chastises Odin/Loki for the uprisings across the 9 realms. Kind of answers a question I've had about this phase of the MCU. Like, why only now is Thanos coming to attack? Like, I get it, you just locked in an ass groove on that throne in Sanctuary, but you're a cosmic deity. You could have just started that Infinity Stone hunt eons ago. Here, we learn how this cosmic unrest is rising simultaneously with Odin's coming death. And we see how him going into Odin's sleep immediately unlocks the gate for Hela's return. Similarly, I think Odin's protection was what kept Thanos at bay, and now that he's gone with Ragnarok, it makes sense that all the gates are unlocked for all kinds of evil, powerful tyrants to run amok, including Thanos. Okay, moving on to New York, and this shady Acres retirement home is actually the same name of centers in South Park and Ace Ventura. It shows up in a lot of movies. And notice how Thor has disguised his hammer as an umbrella, and he taps it on the ground to transform back into his true form. Now, this is a throwback reference to the early Thor comics when he went by the alter ego of Donald Blake, and disguised his hammer as a cane that he could tap twice on the ground to transform. And it's interesting how the exact scene between Thor and Stephen Strange that we saw in Doctor Strange post-credits scene last year plays fully in this movie. The reason is that once Doctor Strange had wrapped production, Taika Waititi was in a mad rush to shoot his Ragnarok scenes in this Sanctum Sanctorum set before it got demolished, or Ragnarok, I guess you could say. So this scene wasn't shot as a post-credit teaser, it was always part of the Thor Ragnarok movie. They just lent the footage to Doctor Strange since it was shot so early. And that way the Doctor Strange team could remind general audiences that Strange is in fact part of the Marvel world. Moving on to Norway. Now you may have noticed that this first fight with Hela and the destruction of Mjolnir was moved from the New York alleyway that we saw in the first two trailers to this field. Waititi reshot it because he felt that the urban setting wasn't right. Remember, set photos also showed Anthony Hopkins dressed as a homeless person in New York, so I think this was a tonal adjustment. Like now, Odin gets this emotional send-off on this cliffside in Norway, the birthplace of Norse mythology. And then that would lead to Hela's return, which would take place now in this nearby field. Okay, let's talk about Hela, played perfectly by Cate Blanchett. Hela is Odin's firstborn daughter in the movie, an adaptation from the comics where she's Loki's daughter. Her design with the form-fitting black-green suit and angular antlers is based on Jason Aaron's comics. Aaron is known for the amazing God of Thunder run, which is a huge influence on this movie. Specifically in the comics, there's a character named Gorr the God Killer who really rattles Thor the way Hela does in this movie. Or Gorr gores Thor to the core. Just some Korg-approved wordplay for you. And after the formalities, notice this simple demand Hela jumps right to.
Kneel.
Beg your pardon.
Before your queen.
Loki's what reaction here is deja vu to his conquering arrival in the Avengers.
I said.
And after Hela trails Thor and Loki to the Bifrost and immediately kills two of the Warriors 3, whom you care so little about, you probably don't even know their names, we see Thor crash land on the garbage planet of Sakaar. Now Sakaar is from the Planet Hulk comics, the other major comic influence on this movie. In those, Hulk ends up on this planet after destroying most of Vegas and being sent away from Earth by Nick Fury. He ends up fighting in gladiator-style combat on Sakaar, facing other contenders like the Silver Surfer. It's a great comic, and originally Waititi planned on simply replacing Hulk with Thor in the Planet Hulk storyline, stranding him on this battle planet like Mad Max and Beyond Thunderdome or something. Luckily, they reconceived the movie as a buddy comedy with both characters. Now, more on those influences later. We meet Valkyrie in this scene. In the Marvel comics, Valkyrie is also known as Brunhilde, and she leads the Valkyrior, who carry the souls of brave fallen soldiers back to Valhalla. And I guess in a way, Valkyrie does that for Thor in this movie, returning Thor to Asgard. Just making a quick stop at the Grandmaster's Contest of Champions first. Thompson said that she based her performance on Sarah Connor from T2 Judgment Day, which you can kind of see in her independent spirit and heavy drinking. Her costume here is modeled on Valkyrie's look in the Fearless Defenders comic, though later she changes into a more classic silver gold getup like her armor from the 70s comics. And I love the look of the planet Sakaar. The mix of colors and shapes in the architecture reflects the planet's society as a scavenger planet, allowing other planets to dump the scraps of their architecture here for these residents to repurpose. And probably the biggest visual Easter egg was the Grandmaster's Tower, which contains the visages of past champions, all of whom are characters from the comic. The Greek god Ares, Man-Thing, Bi-Beast, and Beta Ray Bill. Now, Beta Ray Bill is also from the Simonson run of the comics. He's a Corbinite who at one point wields Mjolnir as kind of another form of Thor. Later on in the comics, he becomes one of Thor's allies. Meanwhile, back on Asgard, Hela wipes out the entire Asgardian defenses, including Hogun. Yeah, you didn't know his name, did you? He was the last of the Warriors 3. Apparently, Cate Blanchett trained in capoeira, the Brazilian martial art, to be able to pull off these awesome moves. And back on Sakaar, the music that plays when Thor is carted to the Grandmaster is pure imagination. You'll recognize that from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which features a similar trippy trip through a tunnel that starts off pleasant, but then gets weird and terrifying, and suddenly stops like nothing happened. And yes, the true oddball delight of this movie is Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster, who's just so weird and awesome. It's so nice of Goldblum to improvise as himself in this movie. Notice the blue face paint on his chin. That could be a reference to the Grandmaster's full blue appearance in the comics. He is an Elder of the Universe, along with the Collector, who is played by Benicio del Toro in the Guardians of the Galaxy. In the movies, these two are brothers. Also, notice that the Grandmaster calls his tournament the Contest of Champions, which is a reference to the Marvel Comics Contest of Champions, in which the Grandmaster assembles various other Marvel superheroes to fight each other like he does here. His assistant is Topaz, played by Rachel House, who also worked with Waititi in Hunt for the Wilder People. In the Ultraforce comics, Topaz is a warrior queen who also gets forced by the Grandmaster to fight against the Avengers. There's a few other comic references here. Grandmaster refers to Valkyrie as Scrapper number 142, which could be a reference to Valkyrie's first appearance in issue 142 of the Hulk comics. Also, this cousin Carlo, whom the Grandmaster melts, is named after comic book artist Carlo Pagulayan. He worked on the Planet Hulk storyline and created the character of Korg. And a weird little reference here, maybe improvised subconsciously by Goldblum, was this line. This is strangely the same delivery and gesture made by Ralph Fiennes in Schindler's List.
I pardon you.
This kind of makes the Grandmaster seem more menacing, but really it just seems like he's in his own movie starring Jeff Goldblum. Now, the design of the Grandmaster's suite, here in pretty much all the interiors of Sakaar, drew heavily from Jack Kirby's art in the comics. Kirby was known for angular, cosmic LSD-style imagery that Waititi mentioned as a heavy influence in the look of this film. Specifically, notice this guy who shows up in the background of the Grandmaster's entourage. He has the same character design of a Celestial, which in the comics is a godlike being that's thousands of feet tall. A real Celestial actually showed up in the collector scene in Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, the Grandmaster mixes techno music here, which actually comes up a lot in this Sakaar section of the movie. This was all composed by Mark Mothersbaugh from the 80s electronica band Devo. Mothersbaugh said in an interview that he wanted to give Ragnarok a distinct sound after watching a video essay by Every Frame of Painting on YouTube, one of my favorite channels, that criticized the use of forgettable temp scoring in past MCU movies. See, it's not just haters here on YouTube. Sometimes we can make a difference to make our nerdy movies even nerdier. And I just love the little joke here with Thor growling at Loki to free him.
He's my brother. Adopted.
And it's a great callback to one of my favorite jokes in the Avengers when Thor talked about Loki.
And he's my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
Next, we meet Korg, the other hilarious scene stealer of this movie. Korg was introduced in the Planet Hulk comics. He's a Cronin, which are the rock warriors. Remember, Thor smashed one of these guys to pebbles in the Dark World. We also saw a Cronin briefly as an Easter egg in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 earlier this year. Now, Korg is voiced by director Taika Waititi, who also did all the motion capture for the role. And part of what makes him so funny is that Waititi based him on Polynesian nightclub bouncers that he met in New Zealand, whom he said are physically huge, but they have the lightest and most delicate voices. And he's joined by Meek, another warrior from the Planet Hulk comics, except here in the movie they changed his appearance and gave him these awesome blade hands. Okay, check it back in on Asgard. Hela and Scourge tour Odin's throne room, and Hela scoffs at the painting of Odin's peace treaty with the Frost Giants, which is a callback to the prologue scene of the first Thor when Odin defeated Loki. And right after this in the vault, we get a look at the casket of ancient winters that they retrieved in that movie. Hela calls it weak, and a really fun Easter egg was Hela shoving this gauntlet, calling it fake. Okay, so just to explain the background here, in the first 2011 Thor, the Infinity Gauntlet appeared as an Easter egg in Odin's vault, but then later, of course, in the post-credit scene of Age of Ultron, Thanos appears with the gauntlet. This led to some confusion among fans over which was the real gauntlet, or if we're supposed to pretend the one in the first Thor didn't happen. I mean, what, are we to believe this is some magic gauntlet? I guess it is a magic gauntlet. I withdraw my question. Anyway, thank you to Hela for clearing things up. Also, she uses the Eternal Flame to resurrect Fenris, the giant Asgardian wolf from the comics. Back on Sakaar, before the battle, Korg references a three-pronged wooden weapon, saying it's not much use unless you want to kill 3 vampires who are clustered together. This could be a reference to Waititi's previous film, What We Do in the Shadows, which is about 3 vampires who lived in close quarters in a house together. Stan Lee makes his traditional cameo as the barber who cuts Thor's hair. Now, the idea to cut Thor's signature long hair is an interesting one. Apparently, it came from Chris Hemsworth himself, along with the choice to shatter Mjolnir after Hemsworth heard Kevin Smith criticizing the previous Thor movies. But also, in ancient Roman history, the warrior slaves that were put in gladiator training had their hair cut short, which could be an influence here. Also, notice how Hulk's hair appears shorter in this movie than it did in past films. So apparently all the gladiators go through this. Although I don't really picture Hulk letting anyone get close to his head with scissors, even if they're Stan Lee. Now, the match between Thor and Hulk has a ton of great details. First, the shield that Thor picked out seems to have an interesting color scheme here, red stripes and a blue circular center. It's possible that he picked that out because it reminded him of Captain America's shield. I don't know. Also, look closely at the background of the Grandmaster's box. That is more Jack Kirby artwork. It's literally a color version of the Sentry Sinister cover of the Fantastic Four issue number 64. And when Hulk smashes his way into the arena, his armor and Spartan-style helmet is the same design as his appearance in the Planet Hulk comics. And Chris Hemsworth's great line here.
He's a friend from work.
That was a line suggested by a kid from the Make-A-Wish Foundation who was visiting set that day. Now, I really loved how this movie as a whole both paid homage to past MCU movies while also poking fun at them. Specifically with Thor trying to calm Hulk by reciting, "Hey big guy, the sun's getting real low," and then stroking his palm. This, of course, is a callback to the Goofy ritual between Hulk and Black Widow in Age of Ultron.
Hey, big guy. Sun's getting real low.
But with perfect comedic precision, the scene undercuts this moment with another callback. Hulk thrashing Thor like a rag doll, just like he did with Loki in Avengers, explaining why Loki was so stressed out this whole scene. Later, in Hulk's apartment, this movie shifts into more of a buddy comedy between these two Avengers. Waititi mentioned as influences movies like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Midnight Run, and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He also singled out Big Trouble in Little China, with the character of Jack Burton being a big influence on Thor in this movie. The director asked, what's the version of Thor just wanting to get his truck back? He's the one looking at the world and bringing a certain sarcasm and irony to this cosmic landscape. Another fun detail, check out how Hulk's bed frame is a giant jawbone. Probably a nod to some massive creature he killed. Maybe also foreshadowing him jumping towards Surtur's massive open mouth at the end of the movie? Huh? Reading into things? Yeah? Okay. I also like how Hulk wears his beaded necklace like he does in the Ultimate Thor comics. And then Valkyrie gives Thor the amount of time it'll take her to drink some booze to explain his issue, but then she chugs it in a matter of seconds, which is a nice parallel to Thor's chugging skills that we saw him in the Doctor Strange scene earlier. I guess Asgardians just don't have time to nurse their drinks, bruh. Later, when Thor tries to access Tony Stark's Quinjet, he tries the password strongest Avenger. No, obviously that's Hulk, as we find out later. And eventually he gets it right with Point Break, which is a reference to Thor's surfer hair and Stark's nickname for him in the Avengers.
No hard feelings, Point Break. You got a mean swing.
Also, this video transmission from Black Widow is the same recording that she left for Bruce at the end of Age of Ultron, which Hulk cut off. Hulk, hang up! But this time it works, turning Hulk back into Bruce Banner, who then covers himself with Tony Stark's spare clothes, including this Duran Duran shirt. It's the cover of their album Rio, which includes the song Hungry Like a Wolf, perhaps a loose setup for Hulk fighting Fenris later. And during this section, we also get this interesting shot of Loki and Valkyrie walking up to the Grandmaster, where the camera swoops through the mirrored surface, creating an optical illusion where their reflections are actually the subject of the action. This reminded me a lot of the famously impossible shot in the movie Contact, where director Robert Zemeckis moved the camera up the stairs and down the hallway before revealing, what? This is all somehow in the reflection of a mirror. Now, do I think Waititi is intentionally paying homage to Zemeckis here? I don't know, the movies do both contain similarly trippy travels through wormholes, but really I could just see Waititi wanting to embrace some of the more complex and memorable visuals from recent sci-fi film. And speaking of sci-fi, Waititi actually consulted with a real-life theoretical physicist, Clifford Johnson, on the space travel in the script. You can actually see some of that influence in the scene where Banner describes the Devil's Anus wormhole as an Einstein-Rosen bridge. Now, an Einstein-Rosen bridge is a concept in astrophysics that describes wormholes as the bending of space-time, taking the shape of two exterior regions connected by a tube. Thank you, Wikipedia. Also, by the way, Valkyrie proposes in this scene to travel through Xandar to get back to Asgard, which of course is a reference to the planet in Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, Thor and Loki using their get help trick is one of my favorite bits in the movie. In a breakdown he did of this scene, Waititi pointed out how physical comedy tends to work better in a wide shot, which is why we see Hemsworth and Hiddleston in wide when the elevator opens. Also, notice how after the throw, Loki pops back up into frame as Thor just continues to walk forward, smiling. Waititi said that keeping the action moving makes the scene funnier than like cutting to Loki on the ground. Waititi also pointed out this one spaceship in the background here, taking great pride in having designed it himself.
I haven't been acknowledged for my amazing design, which is essentially a box, a flying box, and nobody's done that before in the movies except for me.
Now, another interesting detail, the names of the various ships in this movie include the Commodore, Tirana, Statesman, and Kingswood. These are all names of real-life models of the Australian car company Holden. And jumping forward to this final battle on Asgard, Banner jumping out of the ship and landing hard on the bridge, still as Banner, is, yeah, hilarious. It's also kind of a nod to the fall in the 2008 Hulk, except it's funnier this time. And when Hulk joins the battle in his full God of Thunder form, Led Zeppelin's Immigrant song kicks back in. This song is so perfect for a Thor movie, I'm kinda shocked that it hasn't been used in one of these movies before. Robert Plant's lyrics include words like Hammer of the Gods and Valhalla I Am Coming, and you really can't get more on the nose for Thor than that. Also, in past videos, I pointed out how Plant's opening Banshee Wail may have inspired similar badass melodies over the years, notably the recent Wonder Woman theme. In Diana's thunderous arrival in Batman v Superman, that theme evoked a similar feeling of power that Plant's voice gives the God of Thunder here. But take it easy, Marvel versus DC frontliners. I'm not saying anyone is ripping off anyone else here. It's just that certain melodies can lead you to want to depict your powerful hero in a similar best light. Meanwhile, down in Odin's vault, Loki pauses on the Tesseract. Now, it's pretty heavily implied that he stole it here, and I have more theories on what he's gonna do with it in my breakdown of the post-credit scene, so make sure to go check that out. Now, back in the battle, Scourge redeems himself by using his twin machine guns, Des and Troy, to fend off Hela's army and allow the Asgardians to escape. Now, this is a direct homage to Scourge's last stand in the comics, when he stood alone at Yalarbru, sacrificing himself so that others could escape. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I gotta hand it to Waititi for having the balls to end Ragnarok by literally burning it all down, delivering on Surtur's promise to plunge a sword into Asgard and destroy it. To me, this is a key part of what makes Ragnarok stand out from every other MCU movie. Even the really good ones like the Guardians movies or the first Avengers or Doctor Strange, they still always end with the heroes preventing Doomsday. But here Waititi says screw all that. He said in interviews that he wanted to approach this the Ragnarok way, full out, heading for the fire, sprinting full speed toward Armageddon. So yeah, it's in a lot of ways super satisfying to see Asgard get destroyed. It almost feels like Waititi drew on the finales of movies like The Cabin in the Woods or This Is the End, comically embracing the end of days with this giant fire demon. But as you're watching this movie, you can't help but be reminded of Douglas Adams' A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which opens with the Earth getting obliterated. And if you saw it, Edgar Wright's Amazing the World's End, which has a similar apocalyptic scenario. And it's precisely because all of these movies chose to have a not so precious attitude toward the stakes. They're more about the absurdist comedy and the ways these characters have to adapt to these changes, and the fun that we should all have with such a weird cosmic adventure. Which character did you find to be the most fun to watch in Ragnarok? And why is it a tie between Grandmaster and Korg? Comment down below and tweet me your thoughts at Erik Voss, or follow New Rockstars on Twitter at New Rockstars for updates on our videos. As I mentioned before, this video was sponsored by Squarespace. With Squarespace, you can build a super stylish website fast and make your next move in setting up a business, launching a creative project, or just posting various pictures of your head photoshopped on the body of a Norse god. They have professionally designed templates that look great and intuitive tools to make it so easy, even if you don't know anything about coding. Check it out, this is a site that I put together very quickly. It's great. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and go to squarespace.com/newrockstars to get 10% off your first purchase, or click on the link in the description below. And of course, like and share this video and subscribe to New Rockstars for all of our deep dives into Marvel and other stuff that you love. And if you really want to be part of our team, you can contribute to us on Patreon. Big thanks to all of our donors, especially Alan Fleming. Thanks for watching. Bye.